Hi everyone, Effie here. Today I'm going to show you how I made one of these cards using a distress ink blending technique as well as heat embossing our Pyrotechnics stamp set. I'm going in with a mini ink blending tool and I'm starting out with some squeezed lemonade distress ink. After I finish with the squeezed lemonade, I'm going to blend in some fossilized amber right above the squeezed lemonade. This is going to be the bottom portion of our fireworks card, and it's going to create a really nice sunset looking effect. Then I'm going to take some spun sugar distress ink and blend that right above the fossilized amber. After I finish blending the spun sugar, I'm going to take some Victorian Velvet Distress ink and start blending that onto my card panel. After I finish blending the warm colors, I'm going to go in with some tumbled glass distress ink and blend the rest of the panel with that. Then I'm going to continue to layer the blue part of the cardstock with some more blue and purple shades of distress inks. I'm using Chip Sapphire and Blueprint Sketch, and then I'm going in with some Wilted Violet around the top edges. I know the blue part of the card panel is not very big. It's rather a smaller portion of the card, and I'm blending like 4 or 5 different colors in this one small area, but I really like blending the different distress inks right over each other because you have basically a nighttime sky that is several different shades of blue with a little bit of purple, so it makes for a really pretty backdrop for the Pyrotechnics set, which I'm going to heat emboss in different glitter embossing powders. Now that I finished all my blending, I'm going to take my heat gun and kind of dry all of the ink on my entire card panel because we are going to be doing some heat embossing. So if you don't take the time to dry your panel, your embossing powder is going to stick all over because the distress ink will still be wet. Another thing that you might want to do is prep your card panel with an anti-static powder tool. I actually skipped this step because I thought I wouldn't need it, but I think you'll see later I do get some stray embossing powders. So let's get started with the heat embossing. I took the largest Pyrotechnics stamp from this set and I inked it up with some Versamark ink. Now this stamp is fairly large and it's going to be the focal point of my card. What I usually do with this stamp is I heat emboss it in my favorite glitter embossing powders. So I'm just using a gold glitter embossing powder for this one. I usually use Ranger Gold Tinsel powder. After I spoon on the embossing powder onto the stamped image, I'm just going to tap away the excess, and that's hopefully going to take off all the stray embossing powders. I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to make sure that it's good and hot before I actually apply it to the panel. After I'm satisfied with the heat, I'm going to apply it to the embossing powder and melt the powder all over. Now that I've stamped the largest fireworks onto my card panel, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the smaller fireworks stamps from the set all over my card panel. I'm going to avoid stamping the fireworks towards the bottom because that's where I'm going to stamp a cityscape stamp in some really dark black pigmenting. Now I'm just going to take the different fireworks stamps and stamp them with Versamark all over the top portion of the panel, and then I'm going to heat emboss them with different glitter embossing powders. The one that I'm using here is Wow Sea Glass glitter embossing powder. I find that this looks really great over a darker surface of your paper. Our Pyrotechnics set is kind of a layering stamp set because you have the blooming bursts and then you have the little dots, which are the aftermath of the explosion of fireworks. Then we have some bursts that have straight lines and they're coming out from the center. And this is just another phase in the fireworks, and you can really stamp all of these individually or together. There's no right way to layer the fireworks stamp set. I just stamp everything in Versamark ink and layer the different fireworks in different embossing glitters, and that works for me and I usually get good results. I encourage you to experiment with this stamp set if you have it, and just try different combinations of the different fireworks stamps with different embossing powders. I apologize for my head getting in the shot. It happens when you're shooting videos. So here you see me stamping the little dots all around the bursts. So I'm just going to emboss the dots in silver glitter embossing powder. And here I'm just using Zing Silver Glitter metallic powder. After I pour on the embossing powder, I'm going to tap away the excess, and I actually had to take my paintbrush to get some of the strays off, and this is why you should use either an embossing buddy or some type of anti-static powder tool. But if you don't have the actual tool, you can just use regular kitchen flour. This will take the static out of or off of your card panel. Now that the fireworks are done, I'm just going to stamp a skyline onto the bottom portion of my card, and I'm just using some black pigment ink. This is VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, if you don't have a skyline or cityscape set, what you can do is draw in your own skyline, or instead of stamping the skyline, you can just place your sentiment stamp in that area. Or as another option, you can just stamp your fireworks all over the card panel, leaving some room for your sentiment. Sorry for getting some of this off camera here, but what I'm going to do next is take my heat gun and dry the stamped cityscape, because I did stamp it in black pigment ink, which stays wetter longer than a dye ink. I'm going to use the same ink to stamp the sentiment. The sentiment is "It's Your Day, Get a Little Wild," and I got this one from our Sketchy Menagerie set. And the sentiments in that set, they're geared more towards get a little wild or party like an animal. So I just thought that they were appropriate for this fun explosion of fireworks. I'm going to stamp the sentiment using my MISTI tool to make sure that it is aligned perfectly on my card panel. I don't want to have to go through all of this work and stamp the sentiment crooked, because I've done that way too many times, and to save me from that trouble, I'm just going to use my MISTI tool. Now that the card panel is finished, I'm just going to adhere it onto a side folding A2 sized card base. I'm just using a stamp runner, and I'm going to apply it liberally behind my panel, because we did some heat embossing and the panel did warp just a little bit. So I want to make sure that I put on enough adhesive to counteract the warping. The card is now finished, and the end results are really beautiful. I just took this little clip in the sunlight, kind of in a dim room, so that you could see all the glitter and all the sparkle on this card, and I'm very happy with the results. Now, this wasn't a very quick card to make, but in the end it is so worth it, and you get some ink blending practice when you make this card, because I did make several of them. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me. Bye!